Welcome to a play-by-play review. I'm your host, Henry, and week 14 is over, and oh my goodness, what a weird week. Also, I'm a Let's Player now. I am recording a Metroid Prime 4 Let's Play over on my main YouTube channel, Henry the Host. Go subscribe there. I love it if you check it out. But yeah, football happened. It was weird. We had some crazy headlines coming out of this. I'll get to the weird Colts headline in a sec, but yeah, this is the 2025 season is just insane. It's just absolutely insane. And I'm loving about like 90% of it. Basically everything not to do with the Washington Commanders. And I'll get to that in a little bit, actually, because they're surprisingly a 1 o'clock game for the first time since like October. But we'll have to go with the Thursday night game first. I'll just go over a few general notes here. So the New England Patriots, the San Francisco 49ers, the Carolina Panthers, and the New York Giants were all on a bye this week. I believe this is the last week for bye weeks. I'd be shocked if they have week 15 buys. I still think week 14 buys are weird because it's December. Like, I don't know. I still maintain that bye week should be a bit more condensed, or I guess because the NFL is looking to go 18 games per season soon. It seems like that's like Goodell's trying to make that a thing. They might do 2 bye weeks at that point, which is I think that would help because just having one like at the beginning, like having a bye week after like 4 weeks is just kind of ridiculous. When there's another 12 weeks after that. And anyway, bye week rant over. We're seeing a lot of teams now that it seemed like they kind of peaked too early, where like a lot of the feel good stories or like surprise stories of the early season are kind of fading away at this point, where the teams, I think a lot more teams that people are expecting to play well are starting to really pick things back up. And then there's also ones that are like making a late season surge. And then it's just some, and I'll get to the Colts because this is like the team that like made me think of this, is that like there's some teams that peaked early but are clearly starting to fade away for one reason or another. But we'll get to the Colts and we'll get to the crazy news that's going to come out of that in a little bit. So we'll go to the Thursday night game. It was the Cowboys going into Detroit to take on the Lions. Both of them had played on Thanksgiving. The Cowboys had beaten the Chiefs. The Cowboys were riding a bit of a high after going back-to-back wins against the Eagles and the Chiefs, so that was a really nice stretch for them. Going into Detroit to take on the Lions, who had obviously lost to the Packers on Thanksgiving last week, so they're looking to right the ship. They were 7-5, and so the Lions were 7-5 and in a really tough division because the Bears were 9-4, I believe, at that point, and the Packers had just beaten them. The Bears are actually 9-4 now. So the Bears were 9-3 going into this week. The Packers were 8-3-1. And I spoiled that the Bears lost, but we'll get to them anyway. It's not really a spoiler for a thing that happened just in real life. Anyway, doesn't matter. But yeah, the Lions were 7-5 isn't bad, but this NFC this year, like the NFC conference this year, is so competitive, especially on the top end, that I'll spoil ahead to the Bears loss a little bit, but the Bears were the 1 seed in the NFL, or not the NFC. And when they lost, they dropped all the way to the 7th seed. So these type of games in this like last month of the season are really, really important because the NFC is so tightly contested at the moment on every single level. It's not like it's not like the AFC where there's like 2 teams that have 11 wins and then everyone else is like around 8 or 9. Like everyone is within striking distance of each other. So this was a really big game for the Lions and a really big game for the Cowboys too, because they were 6-5-1 and could easily make a run at the Eagles for the division with rattling off a couple more wins or even sneaking into a wild card. Because once again, the NFC is so contested in the playoff standings at the moment. So this is a huge, huge game for the playoff standings and like just how these two teams are going to play out for the rest of the season. So the Lions were fortunate and came out of this with a victory. I don't know if I should necessarily say fortunate, but Lions were victorious in this one. They won 44-30 in a game where they clearly looked like the better team. Jahmyr Gibbs had an insanely good game, as he seems to do like every other week at this point. He had 3 touchdowns in this game. He only ran for 43 yards, but he was just pretty dang efficient. He also had 77 yards receiving, which certainly helps. And it was just one where this was the Detroit offense that we were expecting coming into the season. And it's not like the Detroit offense has been bad, but like this is the one that we saw last year a lot, where they went 15-2, or 14-2, whatever it was. And like this was the powerhouse Detroit Lions offense that we've come to expect in the Dan Campbell era. Amon-Ra St. Brown had suffered the injury in the Thanksgiving game last week, and I think he was questionable coming into this game. I actually thought they had said that he wasn't playing, so I wrote it down in my notes that he was like, yeah, no, Amon-Ra St. Brown this week. And then like the first play of the game, Jared Goff threw like a 10-yard pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I was like, wait a minute, what? He's in there? But yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown was playing in the game. He had a pretty solid game overall. Like it felt like everyone on the Lions had a pretty good game. Like St. Brown had 92 yards receiving. Jamison Williams had 96 yards receiving. David Montgomery had 60 yards rushing and a touchdown. Isaac Tesla even caught another touchdown pass, because he just seems to do that all the time. And Jared Goff threw 309 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions. So overall, it was just one where the Lions offense was cooking with gas. They started out strong. They never really let up. Dallas took a little bit to get going. Dak threw 2 interceptions this game. There was so CeeDee Lamb had a good game, and Ryan Flournoy, I think is how you pronounce it, who's a 2024 6th round pick, had for some reason he decided to have a game of his own where he had 9 catches for 115 yards and a touchdown. So good for him. As like just take your opportunities when you can. But like the biggest, they're the 2 big stories in terms of the Cowboys wide receiver corps specifically. One, CeeDee Lamb did get concussed in this game, where I think he was trying to make a touchdown catch like on the barrier essentially, and it like kind of tipped out of his hands and he fell on the back of his head. So really unfortunate there. Concussions always suck. I gave my little spiel about my own sort of mini concussion that I had last year in one of the recent episodes. I don't remember which one, but somewhat recently. But concussions suck, so I hope CeeDee Lamb gets better, because it's always unfortunate. And he was out a really good game before that. But also the other story, not injury related, thankfully, is George Pickens, who has been widely covered that he's been having an amazing season for the Cowboys. Like, for all the crap us fans and people in the media and really everyone gives Jerry Jones for a lot of his poor management skills, i.e. the Micah Parsons trade. His trade for George Pickens this year was really, really, really good, which is frustrating as a Commanders fan, as a fan of the division rival, or a division rival of the Cowboys. It is frustrating to see George Pickens play as well as he is for the Cowboys, but this game was kind of the exception to his year, where he only had 37 yards on 5 catches. He had 9 targets, dropped a couple of them, and it was clear that there was a bit of lack of effort on Pickens' part, and that was kind of concern going into this, or more that George Pickens has had major character concerns his entire career, like even going back to college. And pay attention to his time in Pittsburgh, and you'll see he's one of one in terms of character. You could say Antonio Brown's up there as well, but AB was a bit different, where he was just a diva and doing diva stuff. Pickens is he's a little wild. To say the least. You couldn't take your eyes off him in Pittsburgh, both because he would make some insane catches, but also because he'd just do the craziest stuff. He'd be crashing out constantly. It was really funny, but it seemed to be that he was kind of keeping his alternate persona or whatever, like his wildness in check, so to speak. I don't know if that's the best term to put it, but a lot of his personality concerns in check in Dallas, as he was having a really good season. Like, if I check his stats, I'm pretty sure he has over 1,000. He has 1,100 receiving yards this season. So like he's having a really good season. It was just this game. It's like the bad aspects were starting to manifest, and it was just one of the many issues Dallas had this game. Like it looked like they were starting to come back in the second half. They definitely played a better second half. They only scored 9 points total in the first half, but it was way too little, way too late. And ultimately Dallas fell short, and they've fallen back to exactly 500 at 6-6-1. So they're not out of it yet. They can still very much go on a run and take the division away of the Eagles, who we will get to at the end of this episode because they were the Monday night game, and I am very excited to talk about that. But once again, we'll get to that. But yeah, it's a game the Cowboys really needed to win if they were going to make the playoffs, and they didn't. So they're kind of behind the 8 ball at this point and need to pick up some wins here and there. As the Lions is once again huge win for them and really keeps them in the hunt for the division, in a really tough division this year in the NFC North. So I think the Lions will definitely make the playoffs this year. I just think they're too good of a team not to make the playoffs, but it'll be interesting to see where they wind up, like which seed they wind up, because once again, the top 3 teams in the NFC North are all above 8 wins essentially, or like at or above 8 wins, which is crazy. One final note is that Brian Branch, the really, really good safety for the Detroit Lions, unfortunately tore his Achilles in this game. So he's going to be out for the rest of the season. Not the only torn Achilles I'm going to be talking about this week, unfortunately. But yeah, big blow to the Lions defense. For a team that I feel like this year has not been dealing with nearly as many injuries to key players as they did last year. So hopefully this is just a one-off thing. Like it's not a trend. Not that injuries can really be predicted all that much, but it's just like, hopefully this is just a fluke thing that happens that no one else, I would wish like no one else just in general gets injured, but like, yeah, anyway, it's just unfortunate for them. And so the Lions are going to be going the rest of the season without their superstar safety. So after that pretty long recap of Thursday Night Football, it was an exciting game, so there's a lot to recap there. We're going to go to the Sunday games, and we'll start, unfortunately, with the Washington Commanders, who went into Minnesota. This is the first time the Commanders, as I said before, they played in the 1 o'clock slot, and since like week 4 or something like that. It was really weird. But the Commanders they've been having a really tough year. I've covered them ad nauseum at this point with their struggles, largely due to injury and also partly due to just playing poorly. But I and many others had a lot of cautious optimism going into this because Jaden Daniels was back. There were certainly a lot of questions going on around. I mean, for a number of things, partly is like, should they even play him at all? Because of his injuries, and that at this point they're basically eliminated, so there's no real point. There's others. I was fine playing him, like if he was 100% healthy, because it's just kind of not smart to sit your young superstar quarterback who is healthy, because it's just, there's no point. Like, why would you play him at all then? But I think it was clear after the game that Jaden Daniels was not 100% healthy with his elbow. And that's not to excuse how he played, because so I should say the Commanders lost 31-0 in probably their worst game of the season, and that's impressive because they have had a lot of really bad ones. But like, this was just embarrassingly poor performance wise. Like, Jaden Daniels didn't have a great game, all things considered. He had threw one interception, and I'll get to that in a sec, but he should have had a touchdown throw. It was a drop by Deebo Samuel. The offensive play calling was just mind-numbingly bad. I don't know why Cliff Kingsbury, who had been calling a pretty solid last couple of games with Marcus Mariota, just didn't seem to call a pretty good game with Jaden Daniels. I don't know why, but I'm not excusing Jaden Daniels because he didn't play all that great either. Like, really no one on the offensive side of the ball, except for probably Chris Rodriguez and maybe Bill Krosky-Merritt had pretty good games. Yeah, it was really bad. And so it was in the second quarter. The Commanders were on the Vikings. I want to like 30, like probably around the 40-yard line, maybe a little bit, maybe 30-yard line, something like that. And it was a 4th and 2, I think. And they were lining up to go for it. And I was fine with them going for it because It was at that point they were down 14-0, and the defense was just terrible, like god awful. But they lined up, and for some unknown reason, Cliff Kingsbury decided to call a screen pass on a 4th and 2 to the side where Andrew Van Ginkel plays. And if you don't know, Andrew Van Ginkel's like signature move is to intercept screen passes. Like that is just the thing that he does. Like he's better at it than like anyone else in the league right now. And what do you know? He intercepts the screen pass, and during the run back, Isaiah Rodgers just makes a beeline towards Jaden Daniels and shoves him to the ground, and that re-aggravates Jaden's elbow injury, which was, really awesome to see a former Eagles player headhunting a Commanders player. I'm totally not salty there. But anyway, so Jaden Daniels got pulled. Dan Quinn said he probably could have gone back in. I was perfectly fine with, at that point, keeping Jaden Daniels out because at that point the game was kind of over. Marcus Mariota came in and like almost immediately threw an interception. It was just bad all around. Unfortunately, later on in the game, Zach Ertz suffered a season-ending ACL tear where he was jumping up to catch a pass that was, you could say it was a hospital ball. It wasn't a great pass, but it was one that Ertz was in the process of catching, and a Vikings safety charged in and basically just went helmet straight to his knee, and his entire leg bent the wrong way in basically like a banana peel shape. It was really ugly, and it's a pretty obviously confirmed torn ACL. It might be career ending at this point for Ertz because he's, I think, 35 at this point. So just awful, awful news there. I feel so bad for Ertz because he deserved to go out better than that. If this is the end, there's a better chance than not that this is the end for Ertz just because of his age at this point. And it's clear he's lost like a number of steps compared to what he once was. And yeah, it was awful all around for the Commanders. Like basically this was the next to worst case scenario where like the worst case scenario would have been if Jaden Daniels or Terry McLaurin, or both suffered like season ending, like really bad injuries. Luckily Terry's fine. He like, don't worry about him. And Jaden's injury is fine. Like he's going to be, Quinn has said like there's no long-term concerns for Jaden at the moment with his injury. I wouldn't be opposed to sitting Jaden the rest of the way because I don't think he's 100% healthy at this moment. And if the team's going to play like they did against the Vikings, like just throw in the towel at this point. They're eliminated from the playoffs, and they should really just tank because they have, I think, the 5th overall pick at this point. So at this point, just I'm okay with shutting Jaden down and letting him heal up for next season because at this point it's like, come on, man, like it's so bad. Anyway, as for the Vikings. Since I haven't talked about them all, this is the best they've looked maybe all season. The Commanders are not a good opponent this year, and this is the worst kind of Commanders that look. But I mean, McCarthy, for all of his faults, played a solid game. He only finished with 163 yards. He did throw 3 touchdowns. He looked fine. I'd say more than fine. He looked solid overall. He wasn't playing like super dangerous with the football. There was maybe a pass that could have been intercepted here and there, but like I feel like that's every game you can nitpick there. But overall, he was commanding the offense well. Like they had a 12-minute, 98-yard touchdown drive in the second quarter, which is the longest touchdown drive that has been like any team has done in 4 years. So it's like, even if stat-wise, the Vikings weren't offensively lighting up the stat sheet. Like Justin Jefferson was kind of a non-factor in this game, which is weird to say. Their offense was just completely dominating the Commanders' defense this game. And I mean, the Viking season at this point is pretty much lost because they're 5-8 and way behind the 8 ball at this point. But these are the games that you look to and say, hey, our quarterback is improving. And so I know for Vikings fans, they've been really stressing with how their quarterback play has been this year. So even if it's not like a super light the world on fire stat sheet type of performance from JJ McCarthy, it's a solid performance that he can try and build on. And that, I think that's where you got to find the optimism there, and credit their defense as well. Their defense has never, I think, been the problem over the past couple of years with Brian Flores, because Brian Flores is a maniac on the defensive side of the ball in terms of like coaching, I should say, because he's not a player, at least not anymore. I actually don't remember. I want to say he was a player, but I don't know off the top of my head. But anyway, like Brian Flores is an insanely like demonic defensive coordinator with the kind of schemes he comes up. And this one, he completely outplayed Cliff Kingsbury in this game. Like completely outplayed him. So credit Brian Flores and credit the Vikings. They played a good, just very good game overall. Now then, to the Dolphins and the Jets taking place in New York between these AFC East rivals. This is a weird one. So the Dolphins jumped out early. They got out to a really hot start, actually. And unfortunately for the Jets, like also almost immediately, Tyrod Taylor got injured, and he was out for the rest of the game. And because Justin Fields was also dealing with an injury, they had to turn to their undrafted free agent rookie quarterback, Brady Cook, who, let's just say he did not have a very good game. It was just not good at all, basically, to say the least. The Dolphins were pretty much in control this entire game. They won 34-10. They scored 21 points in the first quarter and never really looked back. Unfortunately, Devon Achane got injured in this game. I don't know I don't remember what the injury was off the top of my head, and I don't know how long, if at all, he's going to be out for. I know. I think it's Jalen Wright. It's it is. Yes, Jalen Wright. If I can read his name correctly, which I did. He, luckily for the Dolphins, picked up pretty much right where Achane left off and ran for 107 yards on 24 carries and a touchdown. Achane, before his injury, ran 7 times for 92 yards and a touchdown, with one of them being a 39-yard run. I believe it was a touchdown run. But it was one where Tua was, he wasn't turning the ball over. He only finished with 127 passing yards. But, in a game where they went 34-10, you don't really need to. It's like the Vikings game with McCarthy. Like, you don't need to light up the set. You don't need to throw for like 400 yards in a game like this where your run game is just cooking and you're completely dominating the opponent. Like, it was perfectly, like, his performance was fine enough. And this is a team that it's clear that when their running game is cooking, they're actually a pretty solid offense all around. The Jets are the Jets. I've been saying it pretty much all year. They're not a good team. But this was for a Dolphins team that has been incredibly up and down and been dealing with a lot of mediocrity this season. This is a really strong win for them, and they are somehow still in the hunt in the AFC. It's interesting. So I'm going to spoil a couple of results here, but the Dolphins, the Chiefs, and the Ravens are all 6-7 with their records. And I know all the kids out there are doing the whole 6-7 meme, and yeah, go have at it. But it's crazy that those 3 teams, the Dolphins, Ravens, and the Chiefs, are all have the same record. And I saw a tweet, I think it was from Brett Coleman, who said it. It's like that's where it brought this to mind. It's like these 3 teams are 6-7 and got there in wildly different ways. Like that was his tweet, and I'm like, yeah, that is kind of crazy that these 3 teams have the same record. So it's like I'm not really sure if the Dolphins get in to the playoffs, but I just think it's too late and they just don't have quite the record at the moment. But it's still crazy that they're at this point still in contention with all of the crap they've gone through this year. Like, it's kind of crazy. And wins like this, it certainly helps. They're I'm assuming they're still looking playoffs and thinking they can make it. Even if it's a 1% chance or whatever they have, it's you got to win where you can, and winning convincingly against a division rival, even if it's largely against a third string undrafted free agent rookie quarterback, still very good. Cause I always say division games are a total toss up. So next up, speaking of AFC divisional games, another huge game for playoff implications, and also speaking of the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens playing host to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers were 6-6. Ravens were also 6-6. So this was really huge going into this game for how the AFC North division was going to shape out, because it was, as we've seen, or as we kind of expected for most of the season, really after Joe Burrow went down with an injury, it was going to be a race between the Steelers and the Ravens. And obviously the Steelers had gotten off to a good start and then faltered, whereas the Ravens basically did the exact opposite. So this was really crucial for whichever team came out with a win. And as I alluded to earlier, the Steelers won 27-22. So they are 7-6, Ravens 6-7. And this was probably the best the Steelers have looked on offense probably all season, or at least like in a good while. Aaron Rodgers had a pretty solid game overall. He threw for 284 yards and a touchdown, threw no interceptions, didn't get sacked once. He threw multiple deep passes, which had been a thing like he just had not done at all for like 4 weeks straight. Like there was a stretch, I think for the entire month of November, the Steelers had not completed a pass for over 15 yards, which was absolutely crazy, by the way. Like that is insane. But they did this game, and it certainly helped because the Steelers' rushing attack was pretty much non-existent. Aaron Rodgers actually rushed for a touchdown. It was like a 2-yard touchdown that he did. It was like the Peyton Manning like bootleg out and basically just not be covered at all. He even hit the discount double check celebration, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I think this is the kind of performance that Steelers were expecting to see out of Aaron Rodgers when they signed him. This is not to say the game was not close. This game was very close. The Ravens certainly had their chances to come away with a victory here, and there's definitely some controversy in this game. And I definitely have to highlight the no call touchdown that Isaiah Likely had, where he caught the ball in the end zone, got 2 feet down, and it wasn't even like at on the sideline. He was just in the middle of the end zone, caught the ball, took 2 steps, and the ball got knocked out of his hands after that, and it was declared incomplete because he didn't make a football move or something. It's like, by the letter of the rule, it's sort of technically correct, but even then it's not really. And I think the refs even confirmed to John Harbaugh after that they made a mistake and it should have been a touchdown. And I know Ravens fans and certainly Ravens players are upset with that. However, that shouldn't excuse them for how they played this game, because the Ravens offense had, I believe, 217 yards total of rushing in this game, which is insane. Absolutely insane that they had that much and still lost. It's actually, there's a stat where the past 3 times they've played the Steelers, or the past 3 times they've lost the Steelers, they've outrushed them by, I think it was 170 yards. Absolutely crazy. How they don't win doing that boggles the mind. You outrush them by over 170 yards and don't just completely demolish them is crazy. And it's not even like the Steelers put up 50 points. They only put up 27, and the Ravens can only score 22. I don't get it. I don't know what happened in this offense for the Ravens. I guess Lamar Jackson might still be playing hurt. His receiver core has not been playing well. His offensive line has not been playing well. I know Daniel Falele, who I talked about a couple weeks ago, had a really bad game and got called out or something about it. He's been in the news again. Just a shout out my friend who's from work, who is a Ravens fan, and he was he's been just ranting about Falele for a little while. Number 77 on the Ravens, if you don't know, that's his number. He's their offensive guard, and he is genuinely terrible from what I've seen. So it just seems to be that just a litany of small problems that are compounding into bigger problems. And even with good parts, with Derrick Henry and even Keaton Mitchell playing a good game this past week, they just still find ways to lose. And you can certainly blame injuries for some parts. Yes, Lamar Jackson going down for an extended stretch of time is clearly hampered the Ravens. That's not the only reason they're 6-7. They started Cooper Rush over Tyler Huntley. I still don't understand why they did that. And it's clear this team has taken multiple steps back from where they were 2-3 years ago. Their defense, especially their pass rush, is not good this year. And again, really sucks losing Nnamdi Madubuike for the season and maybe potentially longer, given from what I've seen. Like he's been a neck injury suck, essentially, is what I'm trying to get to there. Is neck injuries are not something you want to mess around with because they can just really hurt. I luckily have never suffered. I'm knocking on wood here. I do not ever want to suffer a neck injury because they sound awful. But yeah, I am very concerned about this Ravens team. I don't know if they'd make the playoffs at this point because they are so incredibly mid. That's not to say the Steelers also aren't incredibly mid, but yeah, I just, like the Ravens' strength of schedule through this last few weeks also isn't good, and the Steelers just, it seems like they're just gonna make it to another 9-8 record and lose in the first round, as I predicted at the start of the season, and my stance on that has not changed at all. Anyways, let's move across to the NFC for another divisional matchup. Now the NFC South, as the New Orleans Saints, I almost said New England Saints, but no, the New Orleans Saints going into Tampa Bay to take on the beleaguered Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield has clearly been playing hurt over the past couple weeks, and it showed once again as the Saints actually pulled off the upset, winning 24-20, and I don't think it's going to help the Saints in the long run with their draft position because they are eliminated at this point. But it's good for them that Tyler Shuck is actually showing like a decent amount of like pop to him, I should say. Like he didn't throw a touchdown, but he ran for 2, which is interesting. Like there's definitely some flashes there. I don't know if he's the long-term option at quarterback, but it seems like you could probably ride with him for another year or two. Like maybe they draft a quarterback with their probably top 5 pick, I would assume. Like with their high draft pick, they draft someone in the first round. I don't know who it would be. And set him behind Shuck for a year. Like that could be a thing. But I mean, credit to the Saints. They played a heck of a game. Like the Bucs are certainly dealing with a lot of injuries, but they're still the Buccaneers. They're still leading the division at this point. Actually the Panthers might be tied with them now at this point. I don't know exactly, but like the Saints, they're 3-10, but they at least like can play some entertaining games. They're not like the Jets at 3-10. They're two very different 3-10 teams in my opinion. And like there seems to be some like clear signs of improvement. Like Devon Vele, who they I believe traded for from the Broncos in like the preseason or something like that. Like he's shown some flashes there for the Saints. And I mean, getting a win over division rival is always pretty fun. So I mean, it's good for the Saints there, even if it might screw them over the long term in terms of draft position. As for the Bucs, I mean, it's clear that Baker's playing injured. At least I think he's playing injured. It's because there's been a major fall off compared to what he was at the beginning of the season. Emeka Egbuka is also having a really rough stretch of games compared to what he was earlier in the season. And even with Bucky Irving back, this team feels like it's just missing something. And maybe it's getting rid of Todd Bowles because he's not a good head coach, in my opinion. The Bucs won for it, I think 7 times on 4th down this game and converted, I think 3 of them. I think that's what it was. And yeah, it was just, it just seems like this team is growing more towards that mid category. I mean, they're 7-6 and I'm not even sure if they can hold off the Panthers at this point. Honestly, at this point, I have more confidence in the Panthers going into this last stretch of games than I do the Buccaneers. Because the Bucs just seem so off at the moment. Like there's just something going wrong with them. And I'm not sure if they can hold on to this division lead with how the Panthers are playing. And even like, I think they are getting some reinforcements back, but I'm still just not convinced with how the Bucs are playing at the moment. One final note is that the Bucs I actually forgot about this until I'm looking back at my notes. But the Bucs have signed Jason Pierre-Paul to their practice squad, former longtime defensive player. Let me actually look up the last time he played because it's been a few years. But JPP was on their Super Bowl winning team back in 2020. He played for the Giants for forever. He was a 2010 first round draft pick for the Giants. So it's been 15 years since he was drafted. He last played in 2023. So it's been a little bit. He's on their practice squad, so it's not like this is like he's going to be slotted right into their starting lineup. But there's a good chance we might see him play one or two games in the season, I'd say. But surprisingly enough, not the oldest guy to sign to a practice squad this season. I will get to that in just a sec, because next up, if I can go back to the correct tab that I should that has all the NFL scores on it instead of clicking to a completely separate tab on my computer, the Indianapolis Colts going into Jacksonville, which is their own personal hell, to take on the Jaguars, because the Colts had, like, I think it's that they haven't won in Jacksonville since like 2011 or something like that. It's some crazy stat where the Colts just cannot win in Jacksonville for some reason. And that trend continued. The Colts, who, as we'd seen in the season, had gotten off to an amazing start and seemed to have the division on lockdown, but have skidded considerably really since the trade deadline. They're, I think, 7-1 at one point, and they're now 8-5. And have now lost the division lead to Jacksonville, who's now 9-4 after beating the Colts 36-19 in this game. Now, first things first to point out, Daniel Jones unfortunately suffered an injury this game. It was a torn Achilles, which was really unfortunate because he'd been playing probably some of the best football in his career at this point, and was like really turning his season around and his career around. Not necessarily season, his career around. He was turning it around and really seemed to be the guy that the Colts needed at the moment, even if like over the past couple of weeks he was starting to struggle a little bit. So it really sucks to see him go down with a long-term injury, and I hope he gets better because it's just really awful timing. I don't think if he played the full game, the Colts would have won, because they were just getting run over this game. Travis Etienne had a really solid game, rushed 20 times for 74 yards and 2 touchdowns. Bashal Tootin also had a pretty solid game. Trevor Lawrence had a good game, where like Lawrence looked more like the Trevor Lawrence I think we were wanting to see, where like he was not making really poor decisions all the time. Like he didn't really make any poor decisions, or like any like noticeably poor decisions. It felt like this game he was making some pretty beautiful throws. Threw for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns. Brian Thomas Jr. also had finally showed up again. He had 3 catches for 87 yards. Jacoby Myers has been a revelation for the Jags over the past couple of weeks. Really good trade there for them. And the Jags defense they've looked great over the past couple, like really this whole season. They've overall looked really good. And they made Riley Leonard and Daniel Jones, but more so Riley Leonard's life miserable this game. They just had like it was 28-10 at halftime, and there just wasn't really anything the Colts could do at that point. They just were unable to keep up with a suddenly resurgent Jacksonville Jaguars team who seems to be starting to figure things out. I mean, who knows? They're a very streaky team, and they could fall back to old habits and lose their next game. But I'm much more confident I in the Jags this season than I am the Colts. I think the Colts actually finished third in the division at this rate, because the Texans are going on a bit of a heater, and the Colts are my team more so than any that has peaked too early this season. They still have a chance, but it's growing slimmer and slimmer. Now the big news, and this is one of the craziest headlines I think I've ever seen, is that the Colts, so obviously Daniel Jones is now done for the season with a torn Achilles. Anthony Richardson has been on injured reserve for a while, and I don't remember when it happened, to be honest. I just know he's been on IR for a good while. And like, I don't know if and when he's going to come back this season, because I don't know. But he's a real question mark at the moment. But so the current Colts depth chart at the moment is Riley Leonard, who is questionable because he's dealing with, I think, a calf strain, so he's week to week. Brett Rippon as their second string quarterback, and then Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, who are both on injured reserve and are not going to be seen for at least this coming week, if not probably. Well, again, Daniel Jones after the season, AR5, who knows? So to remedy this, the Colts have signed to their practice squad none other than Philip Daggum Rivers, who has not played football since 2021 in the playoffs. Like, not regular season 2021, January 2021. So almost a full 5 years ago since the last time Philip Rivers played football. And he's now has officially signed to their practice squad. And I really hope he plays football this season because I really want to see Philip Rivers back on a football field. I don't care that he's 44 and a grandfather now. It still boggles my mind and is absolutely insane that he is back. It's so cool. The crazier part is that, well, there's a lot of crazy things about this, but that Tom Brady was older than him when he retired, which just goes show how insane Tom Brady was. But like Philip Rivers has grandkids. His oldest son is the same age as Anthony Richardson. Like he could. I don't know if his kids like play football at that kind of level, but like they could sign one of his kids to play with him, and he'd be like the Ken Griffey and Ken Griffey Jr. and Braun and Brawny or something like that. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, Philip Rivers is back in the league. Don't know if we'll see him get elevated from the practice squad, but yeah, that's like just the most random, crazy headline I saw yesterday. I'm like, I was going to the gym and I was like doing a sit down bike and I was scrolling through Twitter and it showed Philip Rivers. I'm like, wait, what? Why? What do you mean he's coming back? He's 44. He hasn't played in 5 years. He's gonna die when he gets hit. And I need to check the Colts schedule because I'm pretty sure it's like absolutely insane. So the Colts, their next where is it? Their next games are against the Seahawks, 49ers, Jaguars, and Texans. And between them, I'm not sure who has the easiest defense there. I guess the Seahawks, but even then it's like 4 of like the top 10 defenses in the NFL. And you're throwing Philip Rivers in potentially against any of them. Like, oh my goodness, it's crazy. I need to take a lap. I need to take a lap. I'll be right back. It's crazy, dude. But I really want to see Philip Rivers play a game of football. But yeah, nothing sums up 2025's NFL season more than potentially seeing Philip Rivers back on the field in a Colts uniform. Like he did play for the Colts in 2020, but still, it's crazy. Anyways. The Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns. They also played some football. And for a game between two teams that are like competing for the number 1 overall pick, it was a really fun game. The Titans won 31-29 in a game that Shedeur Sanders actually played really well. He had 364 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think he also threw, it was either 1 or 2 interceptions. I think it was 2. No, it was only 1. Okay, I thought it was 2 for some reason. But yeah, Shedeur actually looked really enjoyable to watch this game. And there's like a lot of potential there. And it was nice because the Browns' rushing attack was kind of bottled up. It was also a very strange game in terms of like what you expect to see out of these two teams. Like you expect with the Browns, with how they've been playing this year, that their defense is going to play insanely well. Like the pass rush is going to feast. Their run defense is going to stuff everything. And then the rushing attack for the Browns is going to, like Quinshon Judkins is going to have like 3 touchdowns on 50 yards. And like Shedeur is going to be, more of a game manager rather than anything else. And then for the Titans offense, like their offense would just be non-existent, essentially. That was not the case in the slightest. Like it was the exact opposite, essentially. Shedeur and the passing attack was going insane. The Browns rushing attack was stuffed. And then the Browns defense had their worst game of the season by far. The Titans rushing attack had popped off, essentially. Who was it? Tony Pollard had 161 yards on 25 carries and 2 touchdowns. Like he could not be stopped. Myles Garrett got held to 1 sack and the rest of the team could not get any. I think it was like the lowest like pressure grade or like defensive grade Myles Garrett had received in his career or something like that. Of all teams against the 2025 Titans that he struggled the most for some reason. I don't really know why. Cam Ward was fine. Definitely wasn't the greatest showing in the world. He had only finished with 117 yards passing and 2 touchdowns and an interception, but team wound up with a win. So there's that. It's just a little strange game. It's good back and forth little matchup. There was definitely some question marks where I think it was like basically final play of the game, but the last touchdown the Browns scored, Shedeur basically marched him down the field, scored the touchdown for them. I think he threw a touchdown to Harold Fannin. And they went for 2, but for some reason they went with a gadget play where they took Shedeur Sanders off the field. Said gadget play didn't work at all. Like it was just so uncoordinated and really strange. So not really sure what was going on there, but I mean, hey, good credit for the Browns for putting up a good fight, but credit the Titans more so for pulling this out of nowhere, essentially. Like, I don't know where this came from, but I mean, it hurts them a little bit because they don't have the number 1 overall pick anymore. They lost to the Giants because the Titans have 2 wins now. But I mean, for a team that has little to no identity at the moment, getting any sort of win and getting any sort of offensive identity is pretty big for them at the moment. So I'm not going to fault them too much for this, and I'm not going to hold this against them or say you should have gone for the tank or anything like that, because you got to win some games here and there. You got to build some kind of confidence for later seasons, because you can't just the number 1 overall pick is nice, and they can certainly trade it back for a huge amount of picks if they wanted to. But also getting some confidence for your offense, especially your rookie quarterback, is good. So after that, since while the game was fun, it's also between 2 teams that are 2-10 and 3, or 2-11, 3-10. So it's I don't know how much I can really hype up the effects of it, other than the Titans no longer holding the number 1 overall pick. So after that, the Titans, I don't know why I said that, the Seahawks and the Falcons, they played a game of football in the last of the 1 o'clock spot. This is kind of a weird one. If I can actually find where the scoreboard is. This is a weird one because it was 6-6 at halftime, which I don't think people were expecting because the Seahawks are really good this year. And Darnold and the Seahawks offense was really struggling to get started in the first half. Luckily, their defense was basically doing the same to the Falcons offense. And then the second half happened, and the Seahawks scored, if I can do the math in my head correctly, 31 points in the second half. The Falcons scored 3 in the second half. So the Seahawks won 37-9. Rashid Shaheed had a kickoff return for a touchdown, and Darnold completely turned into the usual Sam Darnold we've seen over the past 2 years in the second half. Jackson Smith and Jigba had 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. Sam Darnold had 249 yards and 3 touchdowns. And it was basically just once the second half hit, the usual Seahawks showed up and just stunted all over the Falcons completely. I'm a little surprised. I mean, it's late in the season and late firings aren't usually a thing, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a coaching change with the Atlanta Falcons after the end of the season, because they just look bad. And I know they're dealing, they don't have Michael Penix at the moment, but they have Kirk Cousins. And for a backup, he's one of the better backups, I would think. And they still look really bad. And they have Bijan Robinson. And Bijan's really good. And they still suck. So, yeah, I don't know what the Falcons can do at this point. Obviously their season's over. I'm pretty sure they're eliminated from playoffs at this point. They might not be with their division. I'm not 100% sure, but they're not making the playoffs. I'm just going to say this right now. I'm not expecting the Atlanta Falcons to make the playoffs. And I just don't know what they do going forward because of the question marks around Michael Penix and his injury. And they need a new coaching staff because the one right now is not working. For the Seahawks, they're 10-3 in a tough division as well. The NFC West and the NFC North are insane, and then the NFC East and the NFC South are just not. It was a weird first half, but the second half, I think, showed them what kind of team they are, so good for them. So they're keeping steady in the playoff race, and it was a good win for them. Now, for the actual last 1 o'clock game, because I don't know why I said the Seahawks-Falcons was the last 1 o'clock game, the actual last 1 o'clock game was a snow game. The Cincinnati Bengals going into Buffalo to take on the Bills in a really fun AFC matchup that was in the snow. And you know it's December when there's snow on the football field. So T. Higgins was back from a concussion. He probably shouldn't have been back because he got reconcussed essentially. It was really unfortunate, and hopefully T. Higgins is okay. Joe Burrow, once again, he's playing, and overall, I'd say he had a good game. He did throw for 4 touchdowns. He also threw for 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter. Both largely really good defensive plays, more so than Joe Burrow just throwing a really bad pass. It's still not good. One of them was an interception on a screen pass by Christian Benford. The other one was basically a tip drill by, I think, it was AJ Epinesa who tipped it at basically the line of scrimmage during a pass rush. And then it got another defender caught it on the deflection, basically. So it was more just Bills defenders making really good plays, more so than Joe Burrow just throwing up a garbage pass. And at that point, the Bengals had been leading by, I think, 9 points. It was a 2-score lead that the Bengals had at that point. And then suddenly the 2 interceptions happened, and they were losing by 10 points. Or maybe not 10 points, but they were losing, essentially. They completely flipped the script of the game. Because the Bengals started off really hot. Burrow was cooking, T. Higgins was cooking, Jamar Chase was cooking a little bit, kind of. Stat-wise, it wasn't his best game, to say the least. But it looked like the Bengals were going to kind of run away with it. The Bills were missing Joey Bosa and Terrell Bernard going into this game. And it showed early on because the Bengals were playing a much better first half of football. But the Bills rally, they just kind of seemed to kept in the game and wouldn't go away. And then the Bengals offense started to stall out. Josh Allen started to really pick things up and play another really good game. And then the fourth quarter happened. The Bills scored 21 points and eventually won 39-34. So really huge win for the Bills to try and keep up with the Patriots and just maintain a good position in the playoff bracket. In the playoff bracket for the AFC. For the Bengals, the little hope they had is starting to slip away now. They're 4-9. Not sure if they're officially eliminated, but they're getting real close. And I mean, at least Joe Burrow still is good, but once again, they need more. I don't know where I think they need more on the offensive line, and they need a lot more on the defense. I just don't know where they can get it because their track record for drafting has been just incredibly bad over the past couple of years. Shamar Stewart, their first round defensive end this year, who infamously had that holdout during the training camp and the offseason, has 2 pressures over the past 11 games or something like that. He's having a terrible year, essentially. And Trey Hendrickson is now done for the season with an injury. The injury that he's had basically over the past couple weeks is now keeping him out for the rest of the season. So I don't know. I don't really know where the Bengals go for here because I don't trust them to make good decisions in the draft. So I just don't know what's going to be different about them going into the next season. Now to move on to the late afternoon games, the 4:05 game to be specific. The Denver Broncos going into Las Vegas to take on their division rival Raiders. And so the Broncos win 24-17. The final score is not indicative of how this game went because the Broncos were pretty dominant this whole game. And this game was never really out of reach. Legitimately, the only reason why it's a 1-score game is because the Raiders kicked a field goal as time expired, basically. They kicked a field goal to make it 24-17 with 5 seconds left. The thought there is obviously you kick it, there's hopefully 1 second left, and then you try and go for an onside kick and then recover it and then go for a Hail Mary. Because you're down 10 points with 5 seconds left. It's there's only so much you can do. It just didn't work out for them in the end. But the Broncos, I mean, Bo Nix was fine. Wasn't his best game. He threw 2 interceptions in this game, I think, Although one of them was just like completely off of Troy Franklin's hands. Oh no, he didn't. Why did I think he threw an interception? Maybe I'm thinking a different game. Anyway, but it wasn't a very like super flashy game for the Broncos offense, which has kind of been their whole season. RJ Harvey had a pretty good game. He had 17 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. He also, I believe, had a receiving touchdown in this game, if I remember correctly. I could be remembering wrong at this point, but I feel like he had a receiving touchdown. He did. No, never mind. Wait, hang on. No, he didn't. Why was I thinking that? I was thinking last week, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I'm a bit all over the place at the moment. But, yeah, anyway, the Broncos were just having a better game than the Raiders. Geno Smith got injured in this game, so we saw Kenny Pickett come in and look actually kind of better than Geno did, to be honest. But it was not nearly enough for the Raiders. They look bad. They look really bad. And they need a lot of work going into this offseason. And for the Broncos, I mean, it's not a pretty 11-2, but it's an 11-2 record nonetheless. And they are now the top seed in the NFL overall. Because I'm pretty sure they're the one seed in the AFC, and there's no NFC teams that are 11-2. So, I mean, hey, good for them. Now, for the next game, I'm actually going to skip ahead once in my notes because I'm going to save the big game for last. Or for next to last, I should say, for the Sunday slate. But the Los Angeles Rams, going into Arizona to take on the Cardinals. I was looking at the Cardinals' name on the scoreboard, and it starts with CAR. Carolina all starts with CAR. Anyway, but the Rams, who had coming off of that shocking loss to the Panthers last week, rebounded quite considerably, beating their division rival Cardinals 45-17. And this is the Rams we kind of expect to see. Matthew Stafford had another really good game. And there's a good chance he wins MVP. Blake Corum, their running back, who is either a rookie or a second round player, now that I'm checking, third round pick last year. He had a really good game, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. Puka Nacua had another really good game, 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. And this was just all Rams the whole time. Their offense was just outplaying the Cardinals, and their defense was doing well enough to keep the Cardinals in check. This was about as one-sided as it gets. The Rams are 10-3. They're one of the best teams in football, I think, even with that fluke loss, or well, not fluke loss, that surprising loss. I don't want to say it's fluke because credit the Panthers. I like how the Panthers played. But, yeah, the Rams just look really good this season. And outside of the loss last week, they've just been playing a really good stretch of football. And, they could always have, there was always a chance where they could, not learn the right lessons from their loss last week and go into Arizona and stink it up and go on a losing streak. Because that's what the Eagles are doing, kind of. But the Rams did not do that. And they took care of business quite handily. So the last of the 425 games was the big one, the Chicago Bears, who were 9-3, going into Green Bay to take on the Packers, who were 8-3-1. And the Packers would come away with a win in this one, 28-21, in a game where it was a pretty solid, even contest. It took a little bit for both offenses to get started. The Bears especially. I think Caleb Williams didn't complete a pass for his first 6 attempts. But after that, he started to get into a groove, especially in the second half. Caleb Williams looked a lot better. Jordan Love actually had a pretty good game overall. He had 234 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he one of his better games this year, I think. Josh Jacobs had another good game. Christian Watson had a really good game. He had 4 catches for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the Green Bay offense just got out to more of a better start than the Bears offense did. They scored 14 points in the second quarter, whereas the Bears only scored 3. The Bears made it a game in the second half, and we're actually marching down to tie it, right at the end. They were down 7 at that point, and they had the ball under the 2-minute warning, and they were in the red zone, and Caleb threw an interception. It was not a very good throw from Caleb Williams. He tried to kind of force a ball to Cole Kmet in the end zone when he didn't really need to. and Keyshawn Nixon made a pretty, I don't know if I'd necessarily say easy interception, because there was definitely a little bit of skill involved because he had to like jump up and grab it. But overall, it was one where it was just, you could tell the Packers were just playing better football than the Bears, because once the Bears' rushing attack got stuffed, they were really struggling to find ways to move the ball consistently, because there were a couple drives here and there where the potential on the offense was getting realized, and like what the peak of the offense was like showing itself through the cracks. But more so than not, it was not a great offensive showing from the Bears. Like, I think I saw a stat where they had like 71 yards of total offense in the first half, and it was the lowest any Ben Johnson offense had like ever in his career. So yeah, it was the slow start really killed the Bears in this game, and then the interception on the final drive for the Bears sealed it. Or I'd say like, yeah. Anyway, the Bears now lose their division crown to the Packers and fall down all the way to the 7th seed. I don't think I think they're making the playoffs. I think their record's just too good right now. But I have no confidence in them at the moment, because at this point they're almost, I'm not necessarily saying a one-dimensional team, but it's when their rushing attack gets stuffed, they really seem to struggle. When their rushing attack thrives, as we've seen over the past couple weeks, especially in Philly, they play much better football. But if they had, like, a lot of these teams in the NFC are in the playoffs are going to have good defenses, and good defenses can really shut down the run. And that's going to prove a problem for the Bears going forward. Now for the Sunday night game, the Houston Texans going into Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. And so over the past couple of years, the Texans and Chiefs have played multiple times, a couple times in the playoffs, and the Chiefs have basically been getting the number of the Texans for years at this point. The Texans finally got to exercise their demons, and while the final score was only 20-10, this was, on a defensive side, pure and utter dominance by the Texans. Their defense it's insanely good. Like, it's probably the best defense in football at the moment. And they made the Chiefs, they made Patrick Mahomes, they made Travis Kelce, and they made Rashee Rice. They made Andy Reid, they made Matt Nagy's lives a nightmare. And it's not even like they were really doing anything fancy. Like, I've seen stats on the Texans where it was like, it was this crazy one going into this week where it was a graph. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was basically showing like how much pressure, like how many blitzes the team sends, and like how many pass rushers they send per snap, and like how effective they are essentially. Like, it was something like how many times you blitz versus how often those blitzes convert or something like that, or like how often your pass rush convert. And so it's like, there's a lot of teams where it's like, some teams who send, like, I want to say it was like Minnesota had like one of the highest blitz percentages, because like they blitz all the time or something like that. It's I don't remember if that's exactly true, but like that's the idea you get. The Texans were at the bottom left corner, where it was like, basically they don't blitz, they just rush for and like drop everyone else into coverage, and then they just win anyway. Like, it's half the time it's just like you're just bog standard like 4-3 defense, and it just works because their talent is insane. Like their pass rush is just ridiculous, and it was clear. Like, their secondary is also really good, and it was clear in this game that Mahomes just legitimately, this was his worst Patrick Mahomes' worst statistical game of his career. Like, starting football game, like he was having a terrible game. Through multiple interceptions, through 3 of them. Travis Kelce had a really bad drop for an interception to basically seal the game. Rashee Rice got absolutely leveled on a crossing route. And I saw like one of the greatest tweets of all time that came out after this game. And so I said it before that Rashee Rice, so in like, I think it was last offseason or like fairly recently during one of the off seasons, Rashee Rice had been street racing essentially, like going 100 miles an hour on the freeway or something, and caused a major accident. I don't think anyone died during it, but multiple injuries and just terrible all around. And it was like there was a dash cam video of it, and after Rice crashed his car, he like at the scene of like a multi-car pileup, he just walked away. And that was the reason he got suspended in this game, or not in this game, in this season. At least I'm pretty sure is what it was. Like he obviously had torn his ACL last season, was out, but he was, I believe, suspended this season is what it was. And the Chiefs have those really corny and like the most poorest taste possible. The free 4 shirts that like Travis Kelce was wearing. It's like, why are you trying to free him? He caused a crime. Like it's not like he's like got falsely accused of PEDs or something like that. Like he almost caused vehicular manslaughter. Like this is not a good thing. Like there was a reason why he was suspended. And so it was like the tweet was of him getting leveled on the crossing route by Jalen Petrie, and it was basically like now Rashee Rice knows what it's like to get absolutely leveled at high speeds or something like that. It's actually, give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up the tweet itself. Let me actually just pause the recording here so I can pull it up because I want to quote this word for word because it was beautiful. It was for someone experiencing karma. It was absolutely beautiful. Okay, here it is. And I'll definitely say that I don't usually like mocking people who are like, like dealing with personal issues and all that. And like, I don't usually like just laughing at a player for, getting hit hard and like potentially suffering an injury, all that. I don't think he did, but it's like, I don't usually condone these type of tweets because like a lot of times they're just mean spirited, but Rashee Rice really deserves it. And the tweet says, Rashee Rice finally understands what it's like to get unexpectedly hit at a high speed or at a high rate of speed and then have the man responsible leave the scene. And it's perfect. Like it's perfect karma. And so, yeah, I don't feel bad for him at all. I don't feel bad for the Chiefs at all. And credit the Texans, even with a pretty poor offensive performance, they got completely shut down in the third quarter. Their defense is so good. It's so good. And like they've really been battling to get back to 8-5. And I'm excited to see them try and make the playoffs. And I kind of want to see them make the playoffs because this defense, man, it's so fun to watch. Like it's just incredibly good. And finally getting rid of your boogeyman in the Chiefs. Credit to the Texans. Like what a good game. Now then, to Monday night. And I did just kind of ramble on a little bit about how I don't usually like making fun of players for stuff and all that. I'm going to do one so here because I am not a fan of Jalen Hurts. I think he's a good person from everything that I've seen. He doesn't seem like a bad guy. I just like clowning on him because he's a mediocre at best quarterback who gets overhyped to insanity by Eagles fans because he has a good team around him. So the Eagles went into LA to take on the Chargers. And this is such a weird game. This was such a weird game. This is 2025 incarnate, essentially. It started off fine. Like the Chargers scored a touchdown, the Eagles kicked a field goal, and then everything kind of went off the rails. Both teams just decided to start turning the ball over all the time. Jalen Hurts threw an interception, and then like Herbert would fumble, and then it was crazy. Omarion Hampton was back in this game for the Chargers, and that was big for them. It just seemed like he added a nice little addition to the running game, and Kamani Vidal has been slotting into a really good RB2 with to go along with Omarion Hampton. Unfortunately for the Chargers, they're not technically starting in the sense that he is now the starting I think left tackle Trey Pipkins, since obviously Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater are both out for the season, but Trey Pipkins got into this game, and the Chargers offensive line went from bad to genuinely the worst of all time. Like it was so bad. The Eagles defense was just constantly putting pressure on Justin Herbert. Like there was a stat going into the fourth quarter where Herbert was getting pressured on 72% of his dropbacks, which that is almost 3/4 of his dropbacks that he was getting pressure on, which is insane. Like credit both defenses in this game. They played incredibly well. The Eagles defense, for all the crap I give the Eagles this year, their defense is insane. And this was without Jalen Carter. Also, they played incredibly well. Do I think with Jalen Carter, the Eagles win this game? Maybe, because they only lost by 3 in overtime. However, the defense was not the problem for the Eagles this game. It was the offense. More specifically, it was Jalen Hurts, as he finished this game with 4 interceptions and a fumble. 2 of them coming on the same play, as I will explain. This is the first time this has happened in a long time. Depending on how you count it, it's like the first time a quarterback has thrown an interception and fumbled on the same play, I think, since 1933. And it was the first time a player had multiple turnovers on the same play since like 1978 or something like that. But it was in the second quarter, I believe, and the Eagles were driving and they were in Chargers territory, and Hurts threw a terrible pass. He's throwing it to A.J. Brown, who ran just the weirdest route possible, where he basically ran like a 5 yards up and then cut inwards towards the middle of the field, past the first down marker, but then kind of stopped and then started to move forward again. And he was in double coverage basically with like a lineman drop back and a linebacker on him. And Hurts threw it right to the defensive lineman, who intercepted it, started running it back. It got stripped from him. Jalen Hurts then recovered the fumble. It then got stripped from him, and the Chargers then recovered that fumble and got possession of the ball. So Hurts threw an interception and fumbled on the same play. He threw 3 more interceptions during the game, including the game-sealing interception in overtime, where it was partly not a great throw. He kind of forced it, but also just a really, really good defensive play by the Chargers in that play. One of them was completely his, 2 of them were completely his fault. They were just really bad throws. The third was kind of his fault, kind of A.J. Brown's fault, where it was a pretty okay-ish kind of bad throw where it was kind of wobbly and pretty tall for A.J. Brown, but it was one where A.J. Brown definitely should have caught it. He didn't, and the deflection went right into the hands of a Chargers defender. So it was kind of, you can fault both quarterback and receiver there. I know A.J. Brown took responsibility for that, but yeah, it was bad. Saquon actually had a really good game, which is the most ironic part. Saquon finally had one of those big, he had 20 carries for 122 yards and a touchdown. He broke off a big touchdown run off of a fake tush push. And it was just a strange game for the Eagles. Who is it? Landon Dickerson went down with an injury in this game. Don't know how long he's going to be out for, but the Eagles they were just struggling so hard. They had a couple good drives, but for the most part, they were either just unable to really put consistent pressure on the Chargers defense, or Jalen Hurts was turning the ball over. And legitimately one of Jalen Hurts' worst performances as a quarterback ever. In the NFL, I would say. He went 21-40 for 244 yards and 4 interceptions, no touchdowns, and a fumble. Saquon Barkley had the lone touchdown for the Eagles. Other than that, it was Jake Elliott, who kicked 4 field goals, missed another one. He got outdueled by Cameron Dicker, who kicked 5 field goals, including the eventual game winner in overtime. Justin Herbert, who was dealing with a fractured hand and just the worst offensive line in the world, didn't have the greatest game overall in terms of numbers and all that, but it was an incredibly gutsy performance because he was just getting destroyed that game. He was also the Chargers' leading rusher. He had a couple of design quarterback runs that were really successful. It was insane. There was a point in the second quarter where the game had 5 turnovers between the two teams on 11 plays. That is absurd. That's just how, no one wanted to hang on to the ball in this game. Ball security was a myth. And in the end, the Chargers escaped with a win in this just baffling type of game. So the Chargers keep their playoff hopes alive. They're 9-4 and keeping up pace with the Broncos and, some of these other AFC teams. I guess they make the playoffs. I'm not sure still. I just think the poor state of their offensive line due to bad play from their interior offensive line and the numerous injuries they had on the exterior offensive line is going to hold them back from making a playoff run. That's what I think. The Eagles are now 8-5. They've lost 3 straight, I believe, and it's like 5 of 6 at this point. They're in total freefall mode from the looks of things, and it's clear that their offense has lost multiple steps over the season, and I'm not sure what they can do to fix it because, their offense is dealing with regression and injuries. Lane Johnson and now Landon Dickerson are out for probably a week or two. Lane Johnson's been out for a couple weeks. Dickerson's going to probably be out for a week or two. And then just regression overall. Like Jordan Mailata's having a downer year compared to what he usually does. And with that, they can't establish the run all that well because throw to Kevin Fatullo, he just does not seem to scheme up good run plays with Saquon Barkley. So they don't have their key weapon to, force the defense to play the run. And because of that, they can really prey on Jalen Hurts and really expose him for the mediocre quarterback that he is. Because as you can see in this game, when he's forced to throw, a lot of times it doesn't always end well. He certainly has his good games when it comes to passing the ball. Look at the Super Bowl. He had a really good game there. But especially this year, it's clear that the Eagles offense has a lot of struggles. And, if they had this offense that they did last year, I would have them a lock for a Super Bowl, to be honest. Their defense is that good. But this offense is not the same as last year. It's far, far from it. And while I think the Eagles will win the division because they have a big enough lead on the Cowboys and they play the Commanders, they have a really easy schedule where they play the Commanders twice and the Raiders and I think the Vikings or something like that. Let me actually double check, but it's really easy schedule for them. No, it's the Bills. So they go Raiders, Commanders, Bills, Commanders for their last 4 games. And that Raiders, I would be shocked if they lost. Absolutely shocked. Even with how bad they are playing, the Raiders are terrible and the Eagles are good enough that I think they can easily beat the Raiders. I think they take one, probably both games against the Commanders, and the Bills games at that point probably wouldn't matter. But anything could happen. It's football, especially in the year 2025. But if you're an Eagles fan, I wouldn't be super concerned about missing the playoffs just because I think they have a big enough lead now. I would be super concerned about the offense, though, because the offense is struggling mightily at the moment. So that's going to do it for week 14 in December now, which is crazy. And that's only 4 weeks to go after this in the regular season, which is absolutely insane. We're starting to get a much better picture of both the playoff picture and the top draft picture, which should be interesting. Didn't really need to see a picture 4 times there, but anyway. And yeah, this should be a really fun last stretch of games. Honestly, I think anyone can win the Super Bowl this year. This feels so wide open. There's so many good teams, but a lot of them have big flaws, and there's none where it's like last year's Eagles where they just went on a run and just never looked back. Outside of the one loss they had to Washington last year against in late in the season where Jaden Daniels threw 4 touchdowns. That was a fun one, but it's you could tell that Eagles team was just built for the playoffs and built for making a run. This year, I don't know if there's a team like that. It's so open and so I just think there's so many teams that have a good shot at winning because I don't think there's a team that needs to be as perfect as the Eagles were last year. It was a perfect storm for the Eagles where everything seemed to be going right for them last year during the run. I don't think a team needs to have that to win the Super Bowl this year. I think they just need a few things to go right and just to play good football when the time comes. Even if it's they have some clear flaws on the roster or they their game plan or whatever. Not. Basically what I'm saying is that the winner of this year's Super Bowl is a total toss up to me at the moment, and I'm very excited to see where it goes. Anyway, that'll do it for this week. I'm trying to get another podcast episode out on Saturday. I just haven't quite found the topic I want to talk about yet. And I was also very busy this past week with doing a lot of editing for my Metroid Let's Play. which has been incredibly fun. I've been enjoying it so much. I would like to thank any and all of you who have been watching my shorts, because I have a lot of views on those so far. Like over 1,000 views on both of them, which is absolutely insane for someone who has 10 subscribers now at this point. Like I was expecting more like along the lines of what my long form content does. And I know YouTube shorts are different. Like short form viewership is different than long form viewership, but like most of my long form content has like 10 views at best, which is like, I'm expecting that at this point with how few subscribers I have. But like, I'm not expecting the 1,000 plus I have on the shorts, which is just, it's crazy to me. Makes me very happy, but it's still crazy. But yeah, once again, please go check out my channel. I would love it if you do. Drop a subscribe. It's free. Literally costs you nothing, and it makes me happy. And it gets me more towards the goals that I want to get. I'm going to try my best to get a Worship Wednesdays out tomorrow, an episode out tomorrow for YouTube. I've been procrastinating editing it, mostly just because it's gotten to the point where it's a little tedious of just trying to comb through the footage I want to use. And this week's footage, while pretty good, wasn't, I don't think, quite as good as, just like the quality of matches I had was quite as good as I had the first 2 weeks. And so it's gotten to the point where I'm just kind of ho-hum about editing it at the moment. But I need to get on it like sooner rather than later because of my self-set schedule of trying to get it out on Wednesdays, and I'm recording this on a Tuesday night, and I've got like no editing done. So I'm probably just going to do a bulk of it tomorrow when I get home from work. Cause I don't really want to do it tonight, but I'm going to have to push myself. I'm falling back into the procrastination vice that I had in high school and college. Cause I would procrastinate everything back then. And well, it got me through. It might not have been the healthiest thing in the world because I would push everything off to the night before, no matter what it was. It was. I was hoping I wasn't going to be like this doing YouTube, but maybe it's just a one-off thing. I don't know. Anyway, that ramble over. Go watch my YouTube stuff, please. I would love it. It would be nice. And I will hopefully get a podcast episode out on Saturday. I've been trying to do it. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but I'm going to hopefully try and do one this Saturday. If not, for whatever reason, obviously next week, week 15 recap, we're going to be on it. And yeah, that's that. That's everything I got. Thank you very much for listening.